Hola and welcome to ProSpanish. This video is for beginners who want to jump straight to speaking Spanish in sentences, so speaking everyday conversational Spanish, and you're going to learn to do that in the past, the present and the future. That's asking questions, answering them, etc. Now it's important that you don't try to memorize the language as I'm teaching it. You don't need to do that. Just relax, follow my instructions, and you will end up knowing it all by the end. Okay, so we'll start by looking at some everyday verbs. And if you're thinking, some of these words don't seem relevant to my particular situation, just stick with it, because what we're doing now is establishing the kind of the conversational framework. And later you'll see how easy it is to layer on that whatever language is good for you. Okay, so estudiar, the first one there, estudiar español, to study Spanish. Estudiar español. What do you think estudiar en Toledo might mean? Estudiar en Toledo. To study in Toledo or Toledo. And can you guess what this means? Estudiar en casa. Estudiar en casa. You might know that casa is house. For example, you've got the Casa Blanca, la Casa Blanca, the White House, or the House White, la Casa Blanca. So can you guess what estudiar en casa is? To study at home. So en casa, at home, to study at home. Okay, let's move down to the next one. Visitar el mercado. Visitar el mercado. So to visit the market. And notice that the letter V in Spanish is pronounced more like in English B. So it's visitar, not visitar. And el mercado, the market. So to visit the market. What do you think el supermercado would be? Mercado is market. What would, let's have the whole phrase. Visitar el supermercado. What would that be? To visit the supermarket. So market, mercado, supermercado, supermarket. Although you probably wouldn't visit that as a tourist attraction, but you might visit el mercado. And you can see that while I'm building up this framework, I'm constantly teasing out more language. So in our asides, we've learnt the Casa Blanca is the White House, en casa is at home, mercado, market, and then to supermercado. And we've done all that in less than 2 minutes. And this is just one of the many approaches that are integrated throughout my levels 1 to 6 course. Okay, so after visiting the market, visitar el mercado, let's go to the bank. So ir al banco, to go to the bank. Ir al banco, to go to the bank. And just underneath it, to go to work. So al banco is to the bank, and al trabajo is also to the work. So in Spanish they say to go to the work, ir al trabajo. And just listen to the pronunciation and give it a go. Ir al trabajo. So not trabajo, as my lazier students might have it, but trabajo, ir al trabajo. And if to go to the bank is ir al banco, how would you say to go to the market? Ir al mercado. Ir al mercado. And obviously ir al supermercado, to go to the supermarket. And let's introduce now a couple of our power verbs. So looking at the first column, these words do a lot of heavy lifting in our sentences. So we have quiero, I want, and quieres, you want. And it says you want, but it can also be do you want. So you want and do you want is the same in Spanish. So quiero, I want, and quieres, you want, or do you want. What do you think this means? Quiero estudiar español. Quiero estudiar español. I want to study Spanish. How would you say, I want to visit the market? Quiero visitar el mercado. Quiero visitar el mercado. Make sure you pause the video if you need to give yourself thinking time before you answer the question. And how would you ask, do you want to study Spanish? ¿Quieres estudiar español? ¿Quieres estudiar español? So it's basically, you want to speak Spanish? Well, that would be, ¿quieres hablar español? Hablar is to speak. So, ¿quieres hablar español? You want to speak Spanish, but you want to study Spanish. ¿Quieres estudiar español? And we'll just take a quick pause there while I mention our very popular Levels 1 to 6 course. This takes the complete beginner or a near beginner right up to a conversational level of Spanish in a series of very easy to follow steps. All the lessons on this YouTube channel are supplementary, whereas the core Levels 1 to 6 is very much a step-by-step program delivered by the same teacher as all the other videos on the ProSpanish YouTube channel. And while the style is very similar to what you'll be used to from these videos on the channel, the key difference is that every lesson carefully builds on the previous lessons so that you can really feel that progress of going from very little or no Spanish up to a level where you can confidently hold a conversation in Spanish. So again, that's available exclusively from prospanish.co.uk. And let's go down to the next one. So I have to, well, tengo is I have, tengo, I have, and we just add que, tengo que, if we want to say I have to, like I must. And tienes que, you have to, tienes que. So obviously it could also be a question. Tienes que, do you have to? So tengo que, I have to, tienes que, you have to. How would you say you have to go to the bank? What would that be? Tienes que ir al banco. Tienes que ir al banco. So we're just fitting these together like a puzzle. How about I have to go to work? So I'd like to do that, but I have to go to work. What would that be? Tengo que ir al, not trabajo, al trabajo. Tengo que ir al trabajo. And actually, let's just add in now a couple from our final column. A couple of time phrases. So, primero, first, and pronto is soon. Can actually also be used to mean early, pronto, early, but we'll stick with soon for the moment. So pronto, soon. How would you say, I have to go to work soon? What would that be? Tengo que ir al trabajo pronto. Tengo que ir al trabajo pronto. How about, do you want to visit the market first? What would that be? ¿Quieres visitar el mercado primero? ¿Quieres visitar el mercado primero? So you can see how all this is coming together now. And I'm going at a faster pace than I would normally when I'm teaching. And certainly my Levels 1 to 6 course goes at a much more relaxed pace, providing plenty of opportunities for practice and for including techniques to make the language stick. Okay, well, let's add a few more infinitive verbs. That's to-do verbs from our middle column. Jugar al golf, nice and easy because of the golf. Jugar al golf, to play golf. And the great thing about Spanish sports are they are pretty easy. So I wonder if you can guess what this is. Jugar al fútbol, to play football. And can you guess, can you say for yourself, what would it be for to play tennis? Jugar al tenis. Jugar al tenis, to play tennis. How would you ask the question? So you'll need to look at the first column as well now. How would you ask, do you want to play golf? What would that be? ¿Quieres jugar al golf? ¿Quieres jugar al golf? Let's go down to the next one. Estar en casa. Estar en casa, to be at home. So we already saw estudiar en casa, to study at home. And estar is to be. And you can remember that as to be a star. Estar, to be. So to be at home, estar en casa. How would you say, I have to be at home? What would that be? I have to be at home. Tengo que estar en casa. Tengo que estar en casa. And let's just have another time phrase from the final column. Tonight. Esta noche. So literally, this night. Esta noche, this night, tonight. So how would we say, I have to be at home tonight? What would that be? Tengo que estar en casa esta noche. Tengo que estar en casa esta noche. And then next we have salir, to go out. Salir. And you can remember that salir is to go out because it has a connection in its roots with to sally forth, the English expression, to sally forth. So salir, to go out. How would you say, and we're going to use all three columns now, I want to go out tonight? What would that be? I want to go out tonight. Quiero salir esta noche. Quiero salir esta noche. And let's do the final two in the last column. So with me and with you. With me, with you. Conmigo, contigo. Conmigo, contigo. So with me, with you. Conmigo, contigo. How would you say, and just using the middle column and the end column, how would you say to go out with me? What would that be? Salir conmigo. Salir conmigo. How would you ask the question? Do you want to go out with me? What would that be? You want to go out with me? ¿Quieres salir conmigo? ¿Quieres salir conmigo? And you know that quiero is I want. Quiero, I want. What do you think no quiero is? If we just put no at the beginning, what's that? No quiero. I don't want. No quiero. I don't want. How would you say, I don't want to go out with you? No quiero salir contigo. No quiero salir contigo. And can you add on there, so we're going to have two bits from the end column. How would you say, I don't want to go out with you tonight? What would that be? No quiero salir contigo esta noche. No quiero salir contigo esta noche. Let's add a couple more power verbs from our first column. So I can and you can. So puedo and puedes. Puedo, puedes. I can, you can. And of course, they could also be questions. Can I? Puedo? Can you? Puedes? And how do you think you would say I can't? If you remember how to say I don't want, no quiero, how would you say I can't? No puedo. No puedo. What about you can't? No puedes. No puedes. How would you say, I can't go out tonight? What would that be? I can't go out tonight. No puedo salir esta noche. No puedo salir esta noche. And you could add at the beginning, sorry, I can't go out tonight. Lo siento, no puedo salir esta noche. And you could even add an excuse. I have to study Spanish. What would that be? Tengo que estudiar español. Tengo que estudiar español. Or it might just be, I have to study. Tengo que estudiar. How would you ask the question? Can you play golf? Actually, let's change it to, can you play tennis? Can you play tennis with me? What would that be? ¿Puedes jugar al tenis conmigo? ¿Puedes jugar al tenis conmigo? And let's look at the final two power verbs. So, I'm going to and you're going to. Or of course the question, are you going to? So, voy a, I'm going to. Voy a, there's that V as a B, voy a. And vas a, voy a vas a. I'm going to, you're going to. How would you ask the question? Are you going to be at home tonight? ¿Vas a estar en casa esta noche? ¿Vas a estar en casa esta noche? How about I'm not going to? What would that be? No voy a. No voy a. How would you say, I'm not going to go out with you? I'm not going to go out with you. What would that be? No voy a salir contigo. No voy a salir contigo. So you can see already how quickly you can make progress like this. So let's add in some past now. So we're going to stick with the same verbs in the middle, and we're going to just make a couple of changes to the final column. So first is still there. Because we're talking about the past, we probably don't need soon, so we're going to have al final in the end. And that's quite easy to remember because of final. So in the final, al final in the end. And we're going to have ayer for yesterday. And at the bottom there, so we've still got conmigo with me, contigo with you. And we'll have con él with him. And so let's see how we can expand our language to talk in the past. So a really useful little phrase is acabo de. Acabo de is I've just, whatever it might be. So acabo de estudiar español. I've just studied Spanish. So how would you say, I've just visited the market? What would that be? I've just visited the market. Acabo de visitar el mercado. Acabo de visitar el mercado. And how would you say, I've just played golf? Actually, let's add, I've just played golf with him. What would that be? Acabo de jugar al golf con él. Acabo de jugar al golf con él. And of course, it could be any verb in here. So it could be hablar, to speak. So if you wanted to say, I've just spoken with him, acabo de hablar con él. And it doesn't have to be con él, with him. It could be con Pablo, with Pablo. Con mi madre, with my mother. Next down we have I was going to. So such a useful phrase this. I was going to. Iba a. Iba a. I was going to. How would you say I was going to be at home? What would that be? I was going to be at home. Iba a estar en casa. Iba a estar en casa. And if you can remember, Don't worry if you can't, but can you remember I have to from the previous slide? I have to. Tengo que. So how would you say, let's make a big sentence here, how would you say, I was going to be at home, but I have to go to the bank? What would that be? Iba a estar en casa, and I've just realized I didn't give you the word for but, pero. So, iba a estar en casa, pero tengo que ir al banco. Iba a estar en casa, pero tengo que ir al banco. I have to go to the bank. Okay, our next past power verb is conseguí. Conseguí. So this is great. I managed to. Conseguí. Like I managed to get tickets. I managed to do whatever. Conseguí. How would you say, I managed to go out in the end? What would that be? I managed to go out in the end. Conseguí salir al final. Conseguí salir al final. How about, I managed to go to work yesterday. What would that be? So maybe you were ill previously. I managed to go to work yesterday. Conseguí ir al trabajo ayer. Conseguí ir al trabajo ayer. And we'll do the last two together because they look fairly straightforward, because they're a little bit like English words. So, I decided, decidí, I decided, and I tried, intenté. So you could look at it as intention or intended, I intended. Intenté, I tried. How would you say, I tried to visit the market? So, but it might have been closed. I tried to visit the market yesterday. What would that be? Intenté visitar el mercado ayer. Intenté visitar el mercado ayer. How about, I decided to study Spanish first? What would that be? Decidí estudiar español primero. Decidí estudiar español primero. How about, I tried to play golf with him? What would that be? Intenté jugar al golf con él. Intenté jugar al golf con él. How about, I decided to go to work in the end? What would that be? Decidí ir al trabajo al final. Decidí ir al trabajo al final. So, as I mentioned a few times, we've sacrificed the fluency practice so that I could show you this framework and so that you could experience for yourself how quickly you can learn with my approaches. And so if you're looking to become conversational in Spanish in the shortest time possible, then head over to prospanish.co.uk where you can download the full Levels 1 to 6 course.